Oh my God, here I am. Hello, hello. Hi. How's everyone doing? Oh, let me fix the camera. She's a little low, isn't she? A little low. We don't I do have a top of my head. Well, happy Saturday to you. Um it is not my preference to be spending my Saturday going live and talking about the things I'm about to talk about, but I kind of feel like I don't have much of an option cuz things are a little crazy on the internet now. And that's just what I want to spend this whole time talking about is how crazy things are on the internet because it's bothersome to say the least. This stream is going to go very similar to the last live stream that I did here on YouTube, which is to say I have a prepared statement, you guys, okay? I have an outline and yeah, so I'm going to be sticking to my talking points, which means I will not be closely monitoring the chat, at least during the time that I am going over my talking points. I will be doing a Q&A session at the end of this. I would ask, and I will probably have to reiterate this later on, but when I say Q&A session, I mean questions related to what I have talked about on this live stream. So this is not going to be a general Q&A. If you have questions about my adult industry work and personal questions and things like that, I'm happy to answer those. But if you want me to answer those, it's like kind of part of my job. So I ask that you join my spicy site and ask me them there instead of here, because this is not the venue for me to be getting into those things. Okay, now all that being said, I don't know why. Okay, I'm being picky about my sound levels. Let me just. If I sound too loud or too quiet, let me know in the chat. I'll wait for responses in case anyone has a preference in a direction with regard to that before I launch into my outline. It's hot, man. It's so hot. This room is hot. Okay, no one's saying shit about the sound. Okay, we got one all good. Lovely. Sweet. Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to leave it at that. I'm hitting record because I forgot to separately record my stream last time, and that was a pain in the butt when I wanted to re-upload the archive version. All right, y'all. Welcome to my YouTube live. And today I'm going to be talking about censorship, age verification, and the Steam and itch.io crackdown, and a couple other things in between, but I'm really going to focus on these three main things because I've noticed that a lot of folks have started taking more seriously the threats to free speech and the level of censorship we're experiencing on the internet. It's really hard for me to not say I told you so. I guess it's hard enough for me to not say it that I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say I told you so because I have been talking about this for 3 years, like very consistently for 3 years. But I was also talking about it before that even. But I seriously started really like, you know, beating the dead horse about it 3 years ago in 2022 when we first started seeing age verification laws popping up across the US. Oh yeah, I haven't introduced myself. So if anyone's watching this, whether right now on the live or if you're watching the archive video later on, if you haven't seen me before, if you're not familiar with my work, I'm Siri Dahl. I'm an adult industry performer. I've been in the industry for 13 years, and I am also a SW rights activist. I have to use some censored language because of the platform I'm on. But yeah, and I am also increasingly a pro free speech, anti censorship activist because that overlaps with a lot of what I do in my work defending my industry, the adult industry, and our right to make the content that we make because it's protected by the First Amendment and our free speech rights. So, what I want to talk about today is this rising wave of censorship online, and related to that, age verification laws, which 24 states in the US have now passed. The UK just passed a sweeping age verification legislation that is already having some really nasty effects over there. Related to this, we also just recently, this past week, saw a massive purge of a bunch of different games from the platforms Steam and itch.io. I'll be talking about more of that in detail. This is just an overview of all the stuff I want to cover. A lot of what we're seeing right now with some of these, like, not patently adult websites having issues with censorship, this is completely echoing and paralleling what adult sites have already been dealing with for years. And when I'm saying, like, I told you so, that's kind of what I mean. Like, people like me, people in the adult industry, have been warning the rest of the entertainment industry that the censorship is not going to stop with us. Like, because that's always been clear to us. They're out to get a whole lot of stuff. What I also want to talk about, maybe most importantly in this, because I've talked a lot already publicly about age verification and censorship and the harms of, like, the chilling effect on free speech that these things have. But today, I actually want to dig a little more into some of the bad actors that are pushing for this kind of censorship. So I'll be getting into that, and that'll be fun, if you want to call it that. So first of all right, we're in the age of age checking on the internet. We're in the era of having to show your ID to use the internet increasingly. Of course, they started by passing age verification laws. Some of the first states in the U.S. to pass these laws happened back in 2022. And it's been like a snowball rolling down a hill. It just gets bigger and bigger. It moves faster and faster. The more laws get passed, some of them have been challenged. I talked about this in my last YouTube live, that there was a Supreme Court decision that upheld the Texas age verification law, which essentially is just giving the green light for every other state that wants to pass a really restrictive anti-constitutional censorship law targeting adult content, and not just adult content, because guess what? When they're talking about what they call corn in these age verification laws, they're also very, very sneakily defining corn in terms vague enough that it can catch in its net so many other things that no reasonable person would think of as being corn. For example, just like mentions of LGBT people on the internet. Those are getting, that kind of stuff is getting caught up in this and being, intentionally misdefined as corn. So yes, of course, corn sites were the first to face this kind of censorship coming from, like, age verification laws, but the model is now also spreading to other platforms. As I just said in my intro, the UK just passed a pretty sweeping law like this, and it affects a lot of sites that are not specifically adult-only websites. I've also talked a lot about one of the biggest risks of age verification laws is that they force users to upload their government IDs or facial scan to basically prove that they're the age of majority or older. And there's a news story that came out this past week that kind of just proves my point for me, okay? I am talking about the T app data breach. Unfortunately. So this dating app, well, it's an app for women who are dating to share information about men that they want to avoid. There's Facebook groups that are like, are we dating the same guy? Those have been popular for a very long time. So this is kind of the same idea, but it's in an app setting, and to prove that you're, I guess, because, the whole point of the app is security for women who are dating. and want to avoid bad people as reported by other women who have, had an experience with a bad dude. So when you join the app, you have to prove that you're a woman by uploading an ID. And when I say woman, that's inclusive of queer and trans women. But yeah, they have to upload an ID. They basically have to prove that they are who they say they are in order to join the app. However, now this was voluntary on the part of the T app, by the way. This is not like the app wasn't collecting ID uploads because they were forced to. They were doing that because that was part of their own vetting process that they, initiated for themselves to provide like a feeling of like safety in their community of people who use the app. So the app was hacked and user IDs and selfies were leaked to 4chan. And then that data has been used, of course, as you can imagine, to harass people who had profiles on the app. Now, the T app folks have said that it was an older data set that was the one that was hacked, the one that was unsecured. So supposedly it's only the data of people, like the accounts that existed 2 years ago, which I'm sure plenty of those people are still on there. So, but it's less data than what would pertain to their like current user base. So they have said that it's still obviously not good. Let me pull up a couple couple stories. Do I have the right links? I do. All right. No, where the fuck did I put them? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Y'all probably can't read the text on that, but I'm going to read it to you. So don't worry if you can't read the tiny browser in the corner. This is a great piece on Wired, which I can't fully read because I'm not signed in, and now I'm not going to sign in because I'm live. But essentially, this is just about the UK law that went into effect literally yesterday, where all adults in the UK have to prove their age to access porn online. But guess what? It's not just affecting porn websites, y'all, okay? It's not. There's another link. Where'd the other one go? Let me get... Here we go. So check this out. The UK's internet age verification law has led to the effective censorship of all LGBT content on Reddit. Reddit now censors LGBTQ plus content under Ofcom's new Online Safety Act. This user on Blue Sky that posted this says, I honestly can't even think of words to describe how vile this is. Here's a screenshot of what I now see when I search LGBT with my VPN switched off. Occasionally, a banner appears at the top of the screen saying something about needing to verify ID to access mature content, but the button doesn't even work. The fact that we're now considered mature content makes me feel sick. And here's a screenshot of their search results. When they type the word LGBT into the search bar in Reddit, and nothing comes up except for literally like homophobic rants and like r/conservative. Attention, all conservative LGBT. I don't know. I'm sure that there's nothing good happening in that thread. r/Islam. Don't be bullied into accepting LGBT. r/just unsubbed. Just unsubbed from LGBT. r/off my chest. I'm queer, but I HATE. I don't even think I can say the word. I'm afraid to say it on YouTube because I'm afraid that it'll be interpreted as me saying that instead of me reading the commentary from someone else who's actually doing the hate speech. But yeah. So this is someone in r/off my chest that is identifying as LGBT, but is just posting about how they're ashamed of their sexuality. Like, it's wild, y'all. Like, literally, the fact that that Reddit just, like, cleansed all mentions of LGBT, all the related subreddits. Like, you cannot see these things on Reddit unless you submit a government ID if you're someone who lives in the UK now. It's exhausting. So yeah, it's just, it's like, it's only been, the UK law has already been in effect for 1 day. Literally, the law went into effect yesterday, and immediately already now, like, anyone who doesn't submit an ID to reddit.com who lives in the UK cannot access any information or, like, meaningful resources for LGBT people, or even just, like, a sense of community in a subreddit that's specifically for folks who identify as LGBT. And obviously, needless to say, because this is a result of age verification stuff, then it means all teenagers in the UK cannot access this information. Because apparently it's being conflated with corn. And, this is similar to what we're seeing in some of the states in the US that have passed the most, like, egregiously unconstitutional versions of their age verification laws. That is the point. This is what we've been saying for years. The chilling of free speech, the censorship of different ideas is the point. It is literally entirely the point. It's not an accident. And it's just going to get worse because people keep falling for this crap. People keep falling for the narrative of, like, oh, these laws are supposed to protect kids. Please tell me what children are being protected by this, because I don't really think there are many. Someone in the chat mentioned, thank you, Quiet Engine. Yes, it does also affect Blue Sky, Discord, and so forth. That Reddit example was just the most readily, like, available one that I could find from someone who actually lives in the UK and has already immediately seen an effect. But yeah, basically all platforms are subject to this age verification law in the UK. Whoop. Okay, now I've got another article. Back to the T data breach. Oh my god, I'm logged in. Hold on, y'all. Let me make my browser disappear for a second so I can finish logging into this. I thought I logged in already. Okay. I did it bad. Okay. You gonna let me in now? There we go. All right. There was a section I should have highlighted beforehand. Yeah, okay, so here's back to the T data breach. And while I'm talking about age verification, I want to talk about this as an example of what a fun time we can all look forward to. Because, yeah, you know what? These 4chan bros are, like, doing a happy dance over getting the data of women that, like, want to avoid bad men on dating apps and their data getting leaked and them getting doxxed. And, of course, the 4chan bros are, like, super thrilled about this. But I don't know that those 4chan bros realize that their asses are going to get got, too. Because this kind of data breach will become very, very common once we have a situation where many, many more websites, and not just adult websites, but websites that everyone uses, are requiring ID for users to access anything on the website. So the 4chan post that initially, like, revealed the leak included photos of 4 women's driver's licenses that the 4chan user said they redacted, but comments in that 4chan thread indicated that many more photos of T users have been exposed, with one person claiming they've downloaded thousands. And here's a screenshot of someone posting, I've downloaded 3,000, but now it seems it's being rate limited. Oh no, I can't get more people's personal information. Womp womp. Just unredacted driver's license photos of thousands and thousands of women who were using this app specifically to protect themselves from abusive and like bad men while dating. It's sad. It's sad, and so what's it going to look like when inevitably some corn website that's been forced to gather user ID information to be compliant with U.S. state laws? What's going to happen when we get our first data breach from that? Well, one, I'm sure there will be some Republican politicians in there who will get to see what kind of hypocritical crap they like to watch. But is it really going to make a difference for them? Probably not. No. What it will make a difference for is the thousands of people who will have their data compromised and used against them. When that's just, that's not right. There's nothing wrong with looking at some corn. Although plenty of people would disagree with me on that. I will die on that hill that there's nothing wrong with it. And, well, I'll be talking about that more later. For now, let me scoot along. Scoot along to my next thing. Let's look at this Wired story. We'll bring this one up so we can talk about Steam and Itch not having corn games anymore. However, damn it, really? Okay, y'all. When I bookmarked all these articles, I was on my phone, and I guess I'm signed in on my phone, but not on here. It's annoying. Let me just get signed in again while no one's looking. Hoo boy, here we go. All right. Wired needs to do better. Dude, I literally just... What is going on? I'm signed in. Oh, I haven't verified my subscription, apparently. That's so annoying. Okay. Let me fix this real quick. Very silly. Very, very silly. Well, while I'm doing this, how's everyone doing? How is everyone's day going? How's everyone's weekend going so far? Good, I hope. Oh, gotta get a text. Gotta do a two-step. I've been to Costa Rica a couple times. It's beautiful. Okay, I think I finally got the issue with Wired worked out. Okay, yay. Oh my god, y'all. So annoying. Okay, we're back in. We're back. I've got the article now actually pulled up. So, okay. So, this is kind of the meat of what I am talking about today. All of the stuff about age verification and data breach, that is background information, just to remind you all of the risk of these laws. But what happened this past week with Steam and Itch is like kind of nuts. and I know a lot of people on the surface may have just heard of this story and they're like, ah, well, whatever. Like, some of those games are weird anyway. Like, I don't know. Have any of y'all played any of the adult games that are available on Steam or Itch? Like, it kind of runs a spectrum of like pretty tame, like goofy stuff to like some actually like, yeah, truly disturbing stuff. But the fact is, at least in this country, in the US, our First Amendment does protect fictional speech, which means that even if a game is portraying things you don't like, that you have a problem with, that you find immoral or disagreeable, doesn't mean that anybody has a right to censor that stuff and make it unavailable. Now, that being said, what just happened with Steam and Itch is actually a result of some actions taken by an Australian group, an Australian organization that I will be getting into briefly. But first, I'm just going to read a big chunk of this article because it's really good and very in-depth coverage of what happened. So, Steam and itch.io are pulling corn games. Critics say it's a slippery slope to more censorship. I would agree with those critics. A conservative group is targeting payment processors as a weapon to get adult games de-indexed in storefronts. Even games that have nothing to do with smex or abuse have been caught in the dragnet. Late in the evening on July 23rd, developers with games tagged as NSFW on itch.io, a digital marketplace, began to notice something strange. Their work, whether it was a game about navigating disordered eating as a teenager or about D-pics, no longer appeared in search results. No notification or anything, says a former NYU Game Center educator and developer Robert Yang, whose work explores gay history and culture. He just found out via Blue Sky. Itch.io is de-indexing or removing from its search index any and all adult NSFW games, regardless of why they've been tagged that way. Games are marked this way for a variety of reasons, whether it's due to sexual themes, discussions of mental health, or stories that otherwise involve triggering topics. On the itch.io site, founder Leif Corcoran said the sudden and disruptive move is the direct result of an ongoing campaign by Collective Shout, an organization critics have alleged is anti-corn. The group has recently targeted payment processors for Itch and Steam, urging the banking services to stop doing business with those platforms because of the content they host, a tactic known as financial censorship. The move comes a week after Steam removed from its own storefront hundreds of adult titles allegedly containing instances of abuse, rape, or incest, which Collective Shout has claimed was a result of our campaign. They're more than happy to take the credit for this censorship. We'll be looking at a Collective Shout in a minute here. It's interesting. Wow, that was hard to say that. Payment processors, there we go, hold a great deal of power over the companies that use them. When companies like MasterCard or Visa pull support, it impacts that platform's ability to receive payments. Conservative groups sometimes use these financial institutions to put pressure on companies to change their services. Insiders in the adult entertainment industry, which has seen similar campaigns lobbied against platforms like Pornhub and OnlyFans, call these tactics a form of censorship that can hurt, not help, vulnerable creators. Itch's mass removals, which are being enforced on a widespread scale with apparently little consideration of context, have already affected some developers who are queer, female, or people of color, even for award-winning projects. They talk a bit about the game No Mercy. I'm not really going to get into that. It's probably honestly just going to lead to me getting censored on YouTube if I talk about it. It is a game that is very controversial and problematic, and I wouldn't play it. I would probably be upset if someone I loved started playing it and it really had fun. But like I just said a minute ago, fictional speech, fictional entertainment is protected by the First Amendment. Getting a game like that delisted because you find it disagreeable isn't really much different than banning a book because you don't like some of the themes in that book. Censorship is censorship. Roper, and I missed who that is because I skipped the last paragraph. Who the fucking Roper? Oh, that. Yeah, actually, I do know her name. Caitlin Roper, who is the campaigns manager for Collective Shout, this Australian organization that is taking all of the credit for this delisting of games. Roper claims that Collective Shout found almost 500 games tagged with grape or incest, some of which included extreme torture and abuse of women. Roper did not answer questions about the methodology behind the group's investigation into games which should be deemed problematic. Given Steam had not responded at any point, we wrote an open letter to payment processors asking them to stop processing payments on gaming platforms which host the kind of games that they are campaigning against. So they published this open letter on July 11th under the title Open Letter to Payment Processors Profiting from Abuse-Related Games on Steam. The post called out executives by name from MasterCard, Visa, PaySafe Limited, Discover, and Japan Credit Bureau. Roper says that Collective Shout has had no communication with payment processors outside of our supporters sending them emails and our open letter. Then she says, we issued a media release about our open letter, leading to a number of journalists contacting different payment processors for comment. Days later, Roper says that Collective Action became aware of the new rule on Steam and that Steam was removing games tagged with these NSFW tags. So this is very familiar to me. This is deeply familiar to me because all of this that is happening with Steam and itch is exactly what happened with Pornhub back in 2020. It is, except, in our case, in the adult industry's case, it was a different nonprofit organization that was the one doing the back-end dealing with Visa and MasterCard in the effort to get certain websites censored. And that organization in our case was Exodus Cry, which is still around. It is a evangelical Christian organization with ties to a, frankly, unhinged, mega church, evangelical, church in Kansas City. Funny enough, that is called IHOP. I actually can't remember what it stands for. It might literally be International House of Prayer. But yeah, there's a church called IHOP in Kansas City, and kind of sprung out of that church was Exodus Cry, which is a nonprofit. They have nonprofit status. It's an organization that claims that they're combating underage trafficking and things like that. But really, they're actually just an anti-porn organization. They say the word trafficking, but what they mean is people who work in the adult industry and are doing that consensually. There's also been, with Exodus Cry, there's been a bunch of stuff that's come out about people that were actual trafficking victims who sought help through Exodus Cry and not only didn't really get the help they needed, in terms of therapy support or financial support, but also for them to even have the chance of getting any help from Exodus Cry, they were required to sign a pledge of celibacy, which is super weird. Very, very weird to come in and be we're saving you from trafficking, but first you've got to sign this pledge of celibacy. It has a real serious vibe of victim shaming. It's gross. So that's Exodus Cry, the organization that created the whole trafficking hub campaign where they just tried to demonize the heck out of Pornhub, and that then culminated in them basically going after Visa and MasterCard and convincing Visa and MasterCard to completely stop doing payment processing for Pornhub, which still is having big negative effects on that website to this day. As a performer, I used to make a couple $1,000s a month on ad revenue and paid downloads on Pornhub. And since they lost their payment processing capability in 2020, that stuff has never been recovered. I used to be able to pay my mortgage with sales on that website, and overnight just gone. And they've never really fully regained that. And I don't know that they've fully really regained the traffic that they lost out of that either. So, okay, I just wanted to illustrate how that's very similar to what happened with Pornhub a couple years ago. But back to this article. Payment processors are powerful arbiters in deciding what companies can sell. Even private companies like Valve and Itch could face major blowback if companies like Visa and MasterCard suddenly disallowed the platforms from using their services. According to my friend Mike Stabile, policy director at Free Speech Coalition, targeting financial institutions is a fast way for people on both sides to lose something, whether it's access to a product or their livelihoods. Quote, when they allow payment processors to make the decisions, when they don't fight back or defend their creators, what they're actually allowing are the anti-corn groups and the anti-LGBT groups to make those decisions, Stabile says. Free Speech Coalition works with the adult entertainment industry, where anti-corn advocates have successfully lobbied banks and credit card companies before to drop services. These are publicly held companies, and they react to market pressure and to shareholders, Stabile says. They're risk-averse when it comes to their brand. They certainly don't want to be associated with anything illegal. They don't want to be associated with anything controversial. Stabile alleges that these groups are prone to making sensational claims that do not always accurately portray the full picture. That is 100%, side note, the case with Exodus Cry and much of the messaging that they've done around Pornhub over the years. By using these inflammatory terms and making broad-based claims about the content, they're able to effectively censor by debanking it, Stabile says. Roper pushes back against allegations that Collective Shout is an anti-corn group. Put a pin in that. Like, their campaign manager person on the record to Wired saying that they're not anti-corn. All right, here's her quote continued. We are anti-corn in the sense that we recognize mainstream corn overwhelmingly depicts men's violence and abuse of women, Roper says. Really now? Really? Okay, I cannot get through this paragraph without, like, refuting so many things that this woman is saying. Like, overwhelmingly depicts men's violence and abuse of women? So here's a side note. A lot of the time when I've seen anti-corn, especially, like, the ones that, like, call themselves feminist organizations that are messaging very strongly, like, anti-corn stuff, they really take a lot of liberties with what they mean when they're talking about, like, oh, all corn is depicting, like, extreme acts of violence against women. They're talking about, like, choking in a scene, like, hand around the neck kind of thing. To them, this in a scene is an example of a woman being abused, and they're assuming that it's, like, non-consensual, which is kind of crazy because like, look, if you know anything, who doesn't like a little choking? Come on, Jesus Christ, these people, they're no fun. They're so angry and they're no fun. So Miss Roper continues to say, Collective Shout is not looking to ban any instances of explicit or adult content, and we did not do that here. That's straight up a lie. Roper says that claims of freedom of speech violations are being used as a defense of misogyny and male violence against women. All right. Here's this next section. Many games caught in Itch's current examination do not feature sexualized torture or abuse. That includes titles like the award-winning Consume Me, a game about a teenager navigating her relationship with her body and diet culture. So that game's been censored. That's about healing from an eating disorder. Messed up. So developers Jenny Jiao, I'm probably saying that very wrong, and AP Thompson say that although they expect their game will be reinstated, it's completely unacceptable that payment processors are conducting censorship by fiat and systematically locking adult content creators out of platforms like Itch, where they can be fairly compensated for their work. Yes. Those same developers said they believe Collective Shout's mission to protect women and girls is doing the opposite. The protection of women and girls has to be the go-to excuse of every anti-corn, anti-SW, and anti-LGBTQ organization going back decades. Consume Me's developers, right? Their actions here mainly serve to cut off income streams for adult content creators, many of them women. This echoes everything that I've been saying about the censorship attempts with the adult industry. Because if you just take what I was talking about with Pornhub losing their payment processing and all the people that were making good money, like I said, I used to be able to pay my mortgage every month just with the money that I got from Pornhub sales back when you could like sell videos on there. Like, I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I'm a girl. So these organizations say they want to help women and protect women, but I'm like, no, you didn't. You did the opposite. You took away my ability to pay my mortgage with this service that I was selling things on. They don't care. Because what they really mean when they say they want to protect women and girls is that they want to protect the women and girls whose politics and points of view they agree with. If you don't feel the same way they do, if you are not anti-corn the way that they are, then they do not care and they do not want to protect you. Also caught in the dragnet is Nina Freeman's award-nominated autobiographical game Last Call, which explores domestic abuse and recovery. The payment processor delisting hit Last Call, my game about surviving domestic violence, wrote Freeman on Blue Sky. It doesn't have any SMEC stuff or NSFW images, so I guess it must have had some other qualifying tag. I wish Itch had some better leverage against these assholes because this whole situation sucks so much. Shortly before learning Itch had removed his games from search, the developer Robert Yang told Wired that companies like Valve should not defer content moderation to moralistic, puritanical payment processors. If Valve is going to be the biggest landlord of the entire collective art form known as games, they should at least try to be a cool landlord, Yang says. Some may argue we should be grateful that Valve held out for this long against the payment processors. I'm sorry, but gratitude is not a survival strategy for LGBTQ people. Of course we should all be alarmed, and of course we should be loud about the dangers. Oh, here we go. Another quote from Yang. These are the stakes. Conservatives will label anything they dislike as pornographic and obscene, Yang says. This is the goal of anti-pornography and anti-obscenity laws. Conservative control over society. That's the end of that article. It's a long one. I read most of it. Thank you for your patience. But I felt that it was important to share some of the specifics around the games that did get delisted from Steam and Itch, because as you can see in the couple examples given in that article, the majority of, well, not the majority, because it's like over 500 games. So, but there's clearly a lot of content that is not, like, definitively is not pornographic or, you know, problematic in any way that Collective Shout has been trying to say that these games are. And these games are getting swept up in the censorship because it looks like they basically just delisted every game on the platform that has an NSFW tag. So even, you know, the woman who created a game based on her experience, like surviving a domestic abuse situation, that's getting taken down because that's considered adult content in the same way that something that is actually like a corn game is. I'd like to know what the Collective Shout people have to say about that. Or, you know, I don't know, maybe they don't really care about women healing from domestic abuse because maybe that's not their main goal. Maybe their main goal is to censor content they don't agree with by labeling it as corn and then putting pressure on payment processors to get it censored. This very annoying guy in the chat. He's kicked. He's bye-bye. Dread, get a grip. Okay, another article. Because I just have so many articles. This one's actually really interesting, though. So this one digs into Collective Shout. This group, by the way, this is also kind of nuts. So the Anna Valens, the author of this piece for Vice, all the articles she wrote, all the coverage she did of this whole thing with like Steam, Itch, and Collective Shout. She wrote 2 articles, and they just like got deleted from Vice. She was skeeting about it earlier today. Fortunately, there are links provided from the Internet Archive, so I can actually still get the articles and read them. But a little sus that amidst all this controversy, this writer for Vice wrote this article, and then Vice was like, yeah, never mind, we'll delete it from the server. Well, you're also going to get timed out for a much longer time than the last one. So, all right, back to this article. This group takes responsibility for Steam's payment processor censorship policies. They just implied pervert nerds cause society's problems. Oh boy. All right, let's dive into this one. This is Anna Valens writing for Vice. Yesterday, I discussed Steam's new payment processor policies impacting artistic expression on Valve's storefront. According to guidelines published by Valve on the company's Steamworks documentation page, Steam warns against publishing content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors. While vague, Valve has suggested the violating content applies to certain kinds of adult-only content. Games featuring sexual themes around incest were removed from Steam recently. Adult content creators, gamers, and concerned bystanders originally claimed the responsible party was a little-known anti-porn organization named Collective Shout. Now, the group is claiming responsibility for Steam's new payment processor policies, with its co-founder calling impacted gamers corn-sick and brain-rotted. In one case, the organization even retweeted a notoriously anti-trans feminist who declared that, quote, pervert nerds are responsible for most of society's ills. The retweeted feminist, a self-described trans-exclusionary radical feminist, or TERF for short, proceeded to write under her post, evidence number 1, trans. Since we launched our campaign calling on payment processors to stop facilitating payments for sexual torture, and it's really hard to read these terms repeatedly and use algo speak. I'm so sorry. I'm just like have to skirt over them because my stream could get in trouble if I actually say them out loud. But yeah. Since we launched our campaign calling on payment processors to stop facilitating payments for blah, 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 blah themed games on Steam, they have added a new rule to their policies and removed hundreds of these games, Collective Shout tweeted early this morning. We counted almost 500 games tagged with R and I on Monday, and at our last count, there are 82 left. We want them all gone. Here's a screenshot of that pervert nerds are responsible for most of society's ills. She said this in a retweet over the stupid Grok companion avatar thing. Like, yeah, that's a specific example of pervert nerd type stuff, but like to just extrapolate and just project that onto every person that's ever played an adult-oriented game that they got from Steam or Itch is pretty insane. Like, actually. Collective Shout's campaign to pressure payment processors began far before the summer. In April 2025, the organization called upon Valve to remove the controversial adult visual novel No Mercy from its store. No Mercy is the game that I'm not really going to talk about at length here because it's going to cause me to get censored on this platform. Okay, then they're going over the open letter that they wrote. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pretty messed, yo. Without further proof from Collective Shout on the supposed games in question, it's hard to say whether child or childlike characters existed in any games targeted by the organization. So Collective Shout was claiming that some of the 500 games that were targeted for removal were, classed as offensive and marked for removal because they featured some sort of child abuse situation. However, what Anna Valens is saying in this article is that that's not really provable, and because Steam's already had really strict rules about that kind of content for a while, and that what is more likely is that it well, let me just read exactly her words here from the article. Without further proof from Collective Shout on the supposed games in question, it's hard to say whether child or childlike characters existed in any of the games targeted by the organization. It's certainly plausible that Collective Shout is disingenuously describing adult anime characters in adult video games as underage. In 2020, creators warned Patreon was banning adult anime artists based off reductive classifications for deeming adult-appearing anime characters as underage. Again, it remains unclear if similar values and perspectives are at play with Collective Shout. Nonetheless, gamers do have much to fear with Collective Shout, given the organization is set to call on the removal of 82 more games. It's unclear if the group will stop pressuring payment processors if it accomplishes its goals, or whether the organization will continue to police content available on video game storefronts. Given the organization has also called on Elon Musk to ban NSFW content from Twitter altogether, it's likely the group will continue to push for further censorship of adult material, emboldened by its Steam victory. So, yeah, I'm kind of riding on the side of, there probably wasn't actually that much problematic content featuring children in the games that were removed, and they're more just saying that it was children, but it was actually just anime characters that stupid people see anime and they're just it's a kid, even though it could be very clear in the storyline of that game that it is in fact an adult woman. This is look, this same kind of thing has happened in the corn industry before, where I've seen anti-corn people, Layla Mickelwaite is one, because she is kind of the talking head for the Exodus Cry organization. And on multiple accounts, Layla Mickelwaite has tweeted screenshots from corn scenes saying this is a child, and it is in fact an actual performer. There was one that she tweeted that it was someone that a bunch of us knew, and we're this person's 25, and she's tweeting a screenshot from the corn scene saying it's a child. And do you know why she's saying that? Just because it's a woman with a petite build who doesn't have a ton of natural curves. So there's this weird body shaming aspect to this stuff sometimes too, where they're trying to present the content as something that it's not, as something illegal when it's not. And they're solely basing that judgment on the appearance of an individual in the content, and they're assuming that it's a child. It's really weird. It's really weird, and I find it very creepy. Not to mention, if it had actually been legit CSAM, then by screenshotting it and tweeting it out, you're distributing it, which is a felony. So I don't know who she thought she was, what she thought she was proving by doing that. I would go find the screenshot of it, but honestly, I don't want to. I would love to pretend that woman doesn't exist. Ace, that is a good point that you made in the chat. Ace said, my issue is if Steam decided to ban all these games, that's fine. IMO, it's a private company. It can do it at once. My issue is payment processors forcing them to remove games. Yes, I agree. A private company, they get to make their own rules for what they allow in terms of content. And I think that's what makes this so much more disappointing is both of these platforms have historically allowed games to be uploaded within their own guidelines that they created. And now they're having pressure put on them by a third party. yeah, they didn't have a choice ultimately, really. It's like this is exactly what happened with Pornhub back in 2020 is like the payment processor says you lose all of your ability to take payments online unless you comply with what we want you to do. And it's real weird. It's not that I would ever like want to defend capitalism, but yeah, this is a particularly like weird example of hypocrisy in people who I assume, because I have no proof to tell me otherwise, that they lean conservative. And if you lean conservative, you probably like love capitalism. So I'm like, oh, you love capitalism so much that you can't let the market handle itself? Because like these games are out there because people want them. They're not illegal. So it's kind of nuts for the payment processors to step in and be like, no, you can't sell that. You can't sell that because these 5 turfs in Australia said so. I have more to talk about. Of course I do. I'm just catching up in my timeline, y'all, because I moved out of order. I'm just going to read this thread from Mike Stabile. He was quoted in that Wired article, or sorry, the Vice article, and so I'm going to read this because he's always got a good take on this crap when it happens. Mike Stabile says on Blue Sky, anti-corn groups said they were only going after games with violence against women, but what got censored? Award-winning games about disordered eating, LGBTQ plus games, and anything flagged NSFW. Anti-corn groups. We're keeping women safe from violence. Payment processors. We hear you loud and clear. We've banned this game about domestic abuse and recovery. Quote, we have to consider groups. We have to consider whose voices are being heard and whose are being silenced, says the group that just silenced a whole lot of voices. And this is just an isolated quote from that same article where Roper, the lady from Collective Shout, says, I don't think men's speech should trump the rights of women and girls. Violence and dehumanization of women should not be acceptable outcomes of free speech. We also have to consider whose voices are being heard and whose are being silenced. Does free speech apply to women? To survivors of R and sexual assault? Do we have a right to object to speech that promotes and normalizes violence against us? This is so convoluted. Like, okay, continuing, Mike Stabile says, I cannot stress this enough. When you pressure credit cards with wide-eyed claims about abuse and violence, even when it's fictional, they react without regard to who actually gets hurt or what actually gets censored. Over and over, it's the most marginalized that get caught in the dragnet. Oh, here's a fun one. Okay, we're at this point now because next on my outline is to talk about Collective Shout. I want to dig into them. I want to dig into that organization because it's kind of crazy. It may not surprise you that Collective Shout, the anti-corn organization behind this, is comprised of faith-based, pro-life, anti-trafficking, quote-unquote, feminists, quote-unquote, I would put feminists in scare quotes for sure, who have also fought to ban Honey Burdette, 50 Shades, Tyler the Creator, Snoop Dogg, and Grand Theft Auto. Yeah, okay. So now that we're talking about Collective Shout. Oh, hold on. Let me catch on with chat real quick. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to... Sorry, guys. Stupid spammers. These stupid people. Ace, you don't use your powers for good, but you're a mod now. Because I haven't been able to monitor the chat enough while I'm talking to delete these dip shits that are spamming in all caps and stuff. Okay, this is the fun part. This is the part I've been really looking forward to on this whole stream because I want to talk about Collective Shout and how absolutely batshit this organization is, okay? It's wild. It's wild. Here's Collective Shout's TikTok page. Okay. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to open their actual website. Why do I need to verify I'm human? They must get a lot of spam people going to their website to bother them. Wonder why. So let's go to their Our Team page, okay? We're at the website for Collective Shout, this organization that just single-handedly got all these games removed. On their Our Team page, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 women that are running this charity. Yeah. It says at the bottom that they're Australia-based. Collective Shout is a not-for-profit company limited by guarantee and is governed by a board of directors. We're an independent registered charity with no affiliation to religious or political institutions. Yeah, this is the same as Exodus Cry. Their 501c3 filings say no religious affiliation, but like that's different. Like on paper you don't have a religious affiliation, but that doesn't mean that every single member of your board of directors is not a conservative evangelical Christian. Come on now. Non-religious on paper only, essentially. I cannot enable super chats. Thank you for asking, but guess why I can't enable super chats? Because my YouTube got demonetized. Guess why it got demonetized? For posting videos of myself doing yoga fully clothed. Very relevant to the whole point of this entire stream. Unnecessary censorship, overbroad censorship that targets people who do not mean any harm. Because these crazy-ass conservatives legitimately just cannot handle women existing on the internet. Or differing viewpoints existing on the internet, and they need to censor it. So yeah, part of why I'm doing this stream, part of why I'm doing this kind of content on YouTube now is because I have to get a huge chunk of watch hours in a very short period of time in order to apply for monetization again. Yeah, when I say full, I mean like full-length leggings and a long-sleeve shirt doing normal yoga, not even trying to make it spicy on purpose, and it got my channel demonetized. Okay, back to Collective Shout. Okay, we're looking at their team. Melinda, Caitlin. This is Caitlin Roper. This is the lady that does all the press quoting when she talks to the press. Caitlin, well, let's read the thing for each person. Melinda Tankard-Reist, movement director, is an author, speaker, media commentator, and advocate for young people. She's best known for her work addressing sexualization, objectification, harms of pornography, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and violence against women. Do you see in that sentence how all of this is completely collapsed and flattened as though it's all the same issue? Interesting. Caitlin Roper, campaigns manager, is a writer and campaigner against the sexual exploitation of women and girls. She's a founding member of Adopt Nordic WA to fight sex trafficking and co-founder of the Feminist Academy of Technology and Ethics. Well, hate that. You know, if you're doing like escorting type work, you as the worker doing that, selling your service, not criminalized, but the person who would pay you money for your service, the person who would buy it, the guy in the scenario, usually a guy, you know, we don't need to gender it, but just, I'm trying to say it so people who maybe English isn't their first language can follow a little better. because obviously I have to use very censored language. But yeah, the Nordic model is essentially just buying is criminalized, selling is not. Effectively, it still causes just as much harm as regular criminalization, where all of it is illegal. Buffering? Am I still buffering? I don't feel like I'm buffering. Yes, SAFA, it is decriminalized in Australia, and this organization is based in Australia, and one of the women on the board of this organization also is related to another organization that is called Adopt Nordic. Do you see what I mean? She's an Australian woman on the board of Collective Shout who is also working with other organizations trying to get Australia to adopt the Nordic model because she doesn't like that it's decriminalized in Australia. Then we've got Renee, campaign strategy. Okay. She has a background working in South and Southeast Asia with survivors of human trafficking. Lynn Swanson Kennedy. Oh my God, this one is actually crazy. Okay, so there was a brief mention a few minutes ago of how this org Collective Shout has like targeted Honey Burdette stores. I know most of my followers are men. So if you're not, keeping up to date with the trends in women's wear, just so you know, Honey Burdette is a company founded in Australia. They're actually now owned by Playboy, but it was an independent company founded in Australia originally and got very, very popular. They make lingerie. It's like Victoria's Secret, but higher end and a lot more expensive. And they're their ads, very sexy. The storefronts, very sexy. They don't just sell lingerie. They also sell like toys and things and like lube and stuff like that. And there's a Honey Burdette in the mall that's near my house. Like they have stores all over the US, Australia, and I'm sure other countries. But they're a pretty big company now. They haven't been around for too terribly long, but they got popular really fast. So this lady on the board of Collective Shout, Lynn Swanson Kennedy, was headhunted to join the campaign strategy team in April 2019 after the team noticed her Twitter action against shopping centers hosting sex store and multiple ad ethics code violator Honey Burdette. So she got hired onto the board of Collective Shout because she had, I guess, like a viral Twitter thread about how much she hates Honey Burdette and how she's trying to get him kicked out of malls. Which is nuts. Because, like, Honey Burdette, I don't know why anyone would be concerned about that. Like, you're aware that, like, if you go to a shopping mall, no one's putting a gun to your head and be like, you have to go into the Honey Burdette store. You must bring your toddler into the Honey Burdette store. Like, I don't understand this. It's like as though they don't understand that all human beings have free will. If you don't like the sexy lingerie store, don't fucking walk into it. Like, what is wrong with these people? Ugh. In addition, Lynn devotes significant time to tracking predators on social media platforms popular with young people, reporting thousands of them to relevant authorities. That could be